Hi everybody, my name is Alan. On behalf of the crew, I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Bridging Heaven and Earth. The crew is saying, okay, you're going to say something, and they've seen enough of the shows to know that usually something starts coming out. But I tried really to come on and not have a lot of things that, are sitting in my head, to just see, how this moment in spontaneity, in love and consciousness, what is the message that I'm supposed to, as part of this bridging crew and this bridging show, what's supposed to come through me. And, sometimes it takes a little longer for it to actually, start coming out of the mouth. And just what seems to be coming through at this moment is, how we treat each other and how we treat the planet and what we experience as human beings on this planet, how we can live in this time where we know that there's extraordinary change in the air and extraordinary transformation and healing. How do we build these new paradigms? How do we change the institutions from what they're based in now to institutions and interactions and relationships and combinations and collaborations and businesses and jobs and interactions between people and interactions between people and animals and people and the environment? How do we build paradigms? How do we build consciousness? How do we build an understanding that are based in love, that are based in creativity, that are based in experience of our connection, are based in experience of oneness? And these are extraordinary times like that, because not every time's destiny is for us to be involved in that in this powerful and particular way. But this is the time for that. So how do we go from the paradigms that don't serve us generally, that don't really serve the planet, that don't really serve the planet as a whole and the people on it and the animals on it and the rivers on it and the dolphins and the whales and the trees? I mean, how do we go where that is some sort of synchronicity of love, where those combinations are done with passion and grace, with their root in the heart, with their root in the connection, with their root in love? And that, in a way, it's tricky. And in a way, it goes back to really what the bridging show is about, which is healing that root, healing that heart. And then once that root and once that heart is healed, once that feeling of separation is healed, and once the connection becomes the true sense of how we proceed in this life and how we experience this life, then the leaves will heal. What we've been doing so far is not that people aren't concerned about the lakes and the mountains and the rivers and the dolphins and the animals and the horses. It's just that we're not coming from a healed place. We're coming from a place of separation, of disharmony. So how can we once again come home into that center, into that healing heart, into that oneness, into that connection? And really that's what, in one sense or another, every one of the bridging shows is about, to come home. And once we come home into that healing, into that connected heart, into that realized heart, which is really the truth of it. The separations are small, the separations are, in a sense, that's why they're called illusions, because in contrast to the vastness of our oneness, the vastness of our connection, those other things that look separate and look different and look as opposing forces are not anything compared to that love and that oneness. And tonight's guest, Sherry Ackerman, has devoted her life to that healing, to that service, to that destiny, to heal the heart. She's a spiritual teacher, she's an author, she's a modern-day horse whisperer. She's the author of an extraordinary new book, The Good Life, which is a guide to finding personal freedom and a blueprint for having a fulfilling and sustainable life's mission and life's work. And she's also the author of Dressage in the Fourth Dimension, which is a book that ushered in a new paradigm, which is all the things we need to usher in, these new paradigms, these paradigms based on love, that just bring in a new dressage consciousness about coming from that love, coming from that root, coming from that connection to all beings, to all animals, all pieces of this planet are one. And she spent her life literally attaining that experience of love and motion and sharing it. And she's had a really interesting journey to get here. I mean, planes were canceled and she was flying back and forth, over and back and forth where we are in Santa Barbara. And through a really extraordinary set of circumstances, ended up, here at the perfect time, in the perfect way. And she did this really arduous, tricky, crazy journey in such a graceful, loving way. So it's a real gift and blessing to us here at Bridging and to you out there to have Sherry with us. As most of you know, we're in the middle of an international healing art project that came as a vision, it came as a dream. As again, a healing is an acupuncture for the heart of the planet, for that root. To reach out to the world and say, anybody who wants to produce a new original piece based on the theme Bridging Heaven and Earth, any size, any format, any skill level, no deadlines, no time frames. Just produce a new original piece based on the theme Bridging Heaven and Earth. Get it to us here in California and we'll show it on the show. We have a beautiful, beautiful international healing art project website, heaventoearthart.com, that just, really, it's so inspiring and so empowering and so uplifting. Go through it someday, see these pieces that have come in from all skill levels, from all people, from all walks of life, from every country, producing these extraordinarily different flowers of the garden based on the theme Bridging Heaven and Earth. It really is mind-blowing. And we have two beautiful pieces tonight. One is that Sherry did, and one is by Star Williams. And also what we try to do is put on some music, some healing music, some loving, inspirational music. And tonight we have two beautiful music videos by Sean Gallaway and Anne Vanschothorst. She's a Dutch harpist, beautiful Dutch harpist, and Sean's is a beautiful piece. So again, the opportunity is here for us to come together in the intention of serving love and healing the heart and coming together to, bring those new paradigms that serve that and serve the love and serve us, who are light beings, who are love beings on this planet. So join me in a short meditation, then we'll have the first video, and then Sherry will be with us. So join me in a short meditation. Thank you. I hope you guys, I had a really beautiful experience meditating, and hopefully you did as well. So the first video is a beautiful video called The Bird. Anne Vanschothorst she's a Dutch harpist, beautiful, beautiful. We've shown another of her videos recently. She's an extraordinary harpist, an extraordinarily beautiful being, The Bird. Hi everybody, welcome back. So Anne, that's a beautiful video. Thank you so much for sending it. The bird, beautiful video. So, and the extraordinary art piece you're seeing in between Sherry and I is entering the integral age. And just kind of focus on it for a while. Just feel it. Just the colors and the movement, and yeah, very powerful. So Sherry, you know, when you were like manifesting, creating this, what were your experiences?
What I was trying to bring together in this painting, Alan, was I'm really very influenced by a philosopher that hardly anybody has heard of, named John Gebser. And Gebser, during the build-up to World War II, he was in Poland, and he was Jewish, and he began to see what was happening with genocide and violation of peoples, and he was horrified. And he said, how can we do this to each other? How can we hurt one another like this? So he had to flee. So he fled to Switzerland and became known as the Swiss philosopher. And he devoted the rest of his life to studying how human beings could hurt one another. Because he believed, very much like we believe, in oneness. He believed in something he called the ever-present origin. I might call it consciousness, you might call it consciousness or love, but he called it the ever-present origin. And he said, well, if we're the ever-present origin, how can this be happening? How could the Third Reich be building and the extermination of peoples? So he went through every kind of scholarship there was, archaeology, philosophy, psychology, sociology, music, everything you can imagine, and studied the human being. And what he decided was, and I think it's brilliant, that basically there were 5 periods of what he called psychohistory. That it's not just history, because that's something that happens out there, but it's psychohistory. It was something that took place from within us that we project out into the world. And the first period was the period where we were truly one with the ever-present origin. Something like Christianity might call it the Golden Age. Again, Hinduism would call it the Golden Age for the Yuga, the
Sat Yuga.
Yeah, Sat Yuga. Mm-hmm. And he said that during that period, he called it the archaic period. And during that period, there was no separation between us. We were truly one. There was no speech. We were naked. There was no sense of differentiation. We were basically androgynous. We truly were be here now, one being here in different manifestations. Well, we moved a bit forward as our mind, mental faculties began to develop a bit. We evolved into the next structure of consciousness that he called the magical structure. And the painting picks up all 5 of these structures. And I'll tell you why as I get to the end of the story about Gebser, but the magical period was the hunter-gatherer period, which of course I'm very interested in terms of my new book, The Good Life, which we'll also discuss today. But these were people who lived very close to the earth. They still had a great sense of oneness, but not as much as the archaic period. They took one step away from the ever-present origin, but they were still very close to it. There began to be verbal language, maybe even me, you know. There began to be gender. There began to be cave drawings, early archaeological depictions. Certainly we have depictions of hunting and gathering, of eating very close to nature, living very close to nature. And the primary cognitive factor was imagination. Yeah. And so nobody laughed at imagination. It was how they lived. They thought it was a legitimate, viable way of knowing. This is very different to the period we're in now, where if you or I, at our age, exercise a lot of imagination. Sometimes we get told to grow up. And, I'll talk about why that is. But as they began to develop some gender differences and became sexual, population began to increase. As population began to increase, it became very difficult to be purely hunter-gatherers, because when they would migrate, an area would get depleted. So here we begin to see some resource depletion, but an area would begin to get depleted in terms of berries and tree bark and other things that they needed to eat. So it morphed naturally into the next structure of consciousness, which you call the mythic. And this is pretty much where, as Westerners, we actually think history started. Gebser was very clear that it goes much further back than that. But the mythic period is the great myth writers. We get the Iliad, the Odyssey, all the great mythology of Western and Eastern civilization. And during the mythic period, a number of things happened that really caused a bifurcation of consciousness. And this is the period it set up conditions for the period during which we would begin to believe falsely that we were separate. And what happened was written language. Written language began to make strong differentiations between us and them, me and you, male and female, day and night, all that. But the biggest thing that happened was agriculture. The development of agriculture as opposed to hunting and gathering. People started to garden close to home and to actually do this thing that we now call agriculture. I had my garden and you had yours. Now, what happens if my garden has corn and your corn crop fails? During the earlier periods, which were incidentally matriarchal periods, I simply would have shared my corn with you. But during the mythic period, we see a shift in consciousness, a shift towards separation, one step further back from the ever-present origin. And what happens is cultures send out their strong, young men to come steal my corn and take it over to your place. And there you see the shift toward a more patriarchal system, and also toward men becoming more valued than women, and inequalities on many levels. And so we see this really big shift away from cooperation toward competition, away from sharing towards scarcity consciousness. And so what he's basically chronicling as he goes through this research is the development of this thing that we call the human ego. But it's still, it's really interesting, because Gebser proved definitively that there was a time when there was no ego. Yeah, and hopefully we're headed back to such a period. But this period, the mythic period, set up the stage for the real delineation of the human ego, which actually starts with the next structure of consciousness, which is the one we're in, which he calls the mental, rational period. And it's very interesting because there's a little line in his research of demarcation between the mythic and the mental rational period, when there's something he calls the axial age, very brief period of time, 500 years. And during those 500 years, all these heavy hitters dropped into the planet. During those 500 years, Jesus, Plato, Lao Tzu, Zoroaster, the list goes, Muhammad, the Buddha, the list just goes on and on. I always say, thank God for the axial age. What would have happened if it hadn't have occurred? So it was like the ever-present origin knew that we were headed into some rocky times, and we needed some avatars. We needed some teachers, and all these amazing teachers within 500 years downloaded into the earth. And then population increased, and we morphed into this period called the mental rational period. Happened about 2,200 years before the Common Era. 2,200 years ago. So about the period of the Common Era, or maybe 200 or 300 years before the Common Era began. So what happened during this period, in a nutshell, and we all know the ways it happened, was the human intellect became more valued than anything else.
Reason.
Reason. It was the birth of reason. this period.
That's a loser.
Yeah, was the birth
Right.
of reason. And you know, had reason been born, and Gebser says, had reason been born and integrated with imagination. And by the way, the mythic period, the structure of consciousness was intuition. Yeah. So had it been integrated with imagination and intuition, viscerality, compassion, cooperation, all this, we would have been okay. But no, we threw it all out. Ego threw it all out and said, it's only reason. Reason became the God. Yeah. And so here we have now the human ego. This animal is running rampant, Alan. It's loose. It's running all over town. Right. Carl Jung said, running all over town like a wild lion, like an uncaged lion.
Once the separation happens, it's all hell breaks loose.
It's all over. Yeah.
Right.
Things are not the same. And so we began to see rampant amounts of, the extermination of peoples through violent warfare, through exploitation, scarcity consciousness, rape, plunder, pillage. Here we are. Turn on the daily news. Here we are.
Ethnic cleansing.
The whole thing.
Right.
And he said this period, and we're living in this period, and we're deep into this period. And he said this period would go on until one of two things happened. And here we are, right in this period, so it's critical. He said we would either awaken, and if we awakened, we would enter the integral age, reintegrating primordial dance from the magical period, worshiping nature and the stars and the sun and the earth from the magical period, also hunting, gathering, which is things like wildcrafting, which is returning in popularity, home gardening, where it's not agriculture per se, but it's home gardening, which people share freely with one another, or we wouldn't make it. The planet wouldn't make it. So we stand, in Gebser's opinion, at this really important time in history. And I agree with him. I think the moment that we're sitting in, right here, right now, is the moment that determines whether we go forward as an enlightening, I prefer that to be a verb than a noun, an enlightening species, or we wipe this species out. The planet will go on. We will not. And it's what happens, which way we go, is directly contingent upon the decisions and choices we make day to day in our lives. Yeah. And that's, I've chosen in this painting that we enter the integral age, that we dance.
We're bringing the magic back.
We're bringing the magic, and we throw our hands up to the heavens again. We bring the magic back. We're colorful, we're imaginative, we're not realistic. We don't have to be in a suit and tie. We don't have to be squeaky clean and perfect. We can be tribal and primordial.
I say it's we're the cutting edge of the lunatic fridge and over.
And over, yeah, exactly, beyond that.
Right.
Right. And so, yeah, I'm holding to Gebser's possibility that we will enter an integrated period, we'll reintegrate the magic, we'll integrate the mythic, we'll reintegrate the feminine, compassion, cooperation, nurturing. Right. We'll open the heart.
Right. Heal the heart.
Heal the heart.
Right.
Right. Right.
And that was your real motivation and your destiny to write The Good Life, and how that fits and how we need to bridge heaven and earth. Yes.
The book is so much about bridging heaven and earth because, as I share in the book, when I finished graduate school, I got through by hook and by crook, and I'm way overeducated, and so I'm no stranger to the mental faculty. Right. And I finished my doctorate back in the day in philosophy and was left feeling very incomplete, very unwhole, not quite knowing what it was that was missing, but knowing something was missing. So long story short, it really was a long story, but long story short, I decided to move. This was in the late 1960s, early 1970s. So I decided to move to a back to the earth commune in Vermont. And off I went to the north woods of Vermont, not knowing what to explain, what to expect. And condensing, I was there 22 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Condensing 22 years of living to a back to the earth, organic foods, commune experience down. What I learned was that there's no way to champion over nature. I learned to cooperate with nature. I mean, I would shovel a whole driveway, and it would take me 6 hours. And in an hour, it was all blown back in, You really learn non-resistance, and you go, wow, that which is greater than me. And there she is. There's Gaia. There's the planet, And we would plant acres and acres of our garden and our crops and have a drought, or, and that kind of thing would happen. And just really seeing this amazing fury of the mother.
It's coming now.
Yeah, it's good. These earth changes.
These are real.
This is really
tornadoes
incredible.
used to come down and hit one spot for 1 minute.
Right.
And now they come down for 40 hours, and, a mile wide.
And the Mississippi River,
right.
I mean, the whole thing,
yeah,
it's just incredible.
Right.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And if it's not happening externally, it is happening internally.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
It's just everywhere. And there is that, too, because in the last couple of months, people I've talked to, I hear them say over and over, oh, Sherry, I just feel so overwhelmed. I mean, so that's that tsunami from within, Absolutely.
And it is. I mean, it is. I mean, unless you're really deeply rooted, the waves are rocking.
They are rocking. They are rocking. They are rocking. And that's what I learned there was I learned how to stay present in the moment. And I can remember things like nursing a cow through a pregnancy and then Vermont's ridiculously cold, having the baby calf born and freezing to death because it was just so cold, even in the barn, even in the manger. And just that sense of letting go, and learning that the universe has its own infinite timetable, its own infinite wisdom that I couldn't control, that I couldn't cognitively process, and getting okay with that. And like I said in the book, the woman that walked off that commune 22 years later was radically different than the kid, me, that went there. Yeah. So that's what I wrote about, because what I learned was, I think in a nutshell, and I still live that way. I live in a philosophical hermitage in Mount Shasta, California, where we have a completely sustainable program and lifestyle. We grow all our own food. We're solar powered. All of that. People come and stay with us and learn about those kinds of things, how to do that kind of grounding and rooting. And I bring what I learned in Vermont to that hermitage. And what I think in a nutshell I learned was what it meant to live a really good life. And I learned that a good life...
That's a good title.
Yeah, it's Scott Nearing's title. I borrowed it from Scott Nearing.
Maybe what we'll do is show the second video and come back and talk about the good life and how to really bring that in to life.
Let's do it.
Okay, good. All right, so we'll see the second video, beautiful video, Sean Gallaway, I Choose Love. We've actually shown it before, and beautiful, beautiful video, and everyone loved it so much that they asked for it again, and here it is. So Sean Gallaway, I Choose Love. Enjoy.
Now I choose to love. I can see caring or poverty. So what do you choose? I can see gardens, or I can see bombs. I can see life or death coming on strong. So what do you choose? Now I choose to love with freedom flying from my heart where the light keeps shining. And I choose to feel the whole world crying for the strength that we can rise above. I choose love. I choose love. I see us healing, darkness dying. I see us dawning as one world united. So what do you choose? Love or fear? Oh, we choose. Now I choose to love with freedom flying from my heart where the light keeps shining. And I choose to feel the whole world crying. And I choose to feel one voice rising. And I choose to feel us all united in the strength that we can rise above. I choose love. I choose love. I choose love. Love. I choose love. I choose love. Woo! I choose love. Oh, I choose love.
Wow, welcome back. So that was Sean Gallaway, I Choose Love. Very, very beautiful. Thanks, Sean, for sending it to us. And the beautiful digital painting you see in between Sherry and I is by Star Williams. She's from Keithville, Louisiana, called Reflecting Heaven. Star Williams, digital painting, Reflecting Heaven. So many powerful pieces, so many different formats, so many different styles. And everyone is an intention to be part of that healing, a manifestation of love, really. And everyone is welcome to do it, and everyone who does it adds to the love and adds to the healing and adds to the acupuncture. So really, just feel inside yourself if that's part of how you want to proceed in this life, and everyone is welcome to join us in that. So we were talking about the good life and how we kind of get away from the good life. How do we kind of come back to love, come back to the heart?
I think what we have to do, Alan, is we have to look at how we moved away from it before we know how we'll move back toward it. And what I outline in the book is that our move away from it was because the ego, Gebser's mental rational period's ego, fell in love with stuff. It fell in love with bigger, shinier toys and cars and houses and all that stuff. And there's nothing wrong with any of those things. But when it becomes the object of our heart's affection, instead of the object of our heart's affection being the planet and each other and wisdom and nature, then there's a problem. So the way we got into what I call in the book a goods life, like goods being stuff, right. Dry goods being stuff, instead of a good life, was that we allowed ourselves to become infatuated with stuff. So to me, the trip back to a good life is letting go and breaking the lust for stuff. I call it simplicity. Buddhism calls it noble simplicity. Dwayne Elgin calls it voluntary simplicity. But just the very act of choosing consciously simplicity. So, let's look at some examples. For example, do we have to, in order to have a great time, do we have to necessarily take a vacation to Europe that breaks our credit card? No. We can, in this beautiful area here where we're filming this show, we can simply go over and watch the sunset at the beach.
Yeah, there are a lot of dolphins there.
Yeah, a lot of dolphins.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
beautiful,
right there is beautiful.
Right.
Or where I live in Mount Shasta, it's just going out and watching the Alpine glow. Yeah, so look up. So choosing these really more simple values. And in the book, I go through a whole ream of ways we can do that. And I've gotten so many letters from readers, and they go in two ways. There's one group of reader that goes, thank you so much for your book. It came in exactly at the time that I really needed to hear what you were saying. My life just isn't working. I have so much stuff, and I feel so lonely, so alienated, so miserable, so cut off from other people. I'm so much in debt. And this book gives me a blueprint for getting back to a more simple, beautiful life. And then I get letters from other people who are very angry, and they say, I love my stuff. Don't take my stuff away from me. And that's okay too, because they're just not ready to hear that message yet. Because the message is according to where we are, and we're all in different places with it, we can let go of a lot of stuff. And that letting go can get very deep. I mean, we can let go of things that you never knew you could let go of. Just give them away, because you don't need them anymore, and feel totally okay about it. And feel no sense of lack. No sense of scarcity, because you see the beauty in a child, in a flower, in a cool drink of water on a hot day. And so these to me are really spiritual values, the values of the good rather than of goods. And that's really my message. I'd like to share a story about a woman who came to stay with us this year at the Philosophical Hermitage. She came to be an intern with us because she wanted to, her life had reached a point, she was very, very successful, executive director of a corporation, and very, very successful in the worldly goods way. But she was miserable. Yeah. She didn't.
I think there was probably a big club of those people.
A lot of those people. Right. Yeah, and this woman.
And they don't know what to do about it.
They don't know what to do. And she had read my book, and she contacted me, and she said, well, could I come as an intern? And we did have an opening coming up, so I plugged her into that. And she came, and this has been a fantastic, she's still with us, and she is a fantastic, beautiful person. But she came a very angry, pent-up, perfectionistic, driven, type A, alpha person. And now she laughs about it. And she's been with us, I think, 3 months, and she looks back and she goes, how'd you put up with me?
In 3 months?
In 3 months, Alan.
That's amazing.
She had what Suzuki Roshi would call kicking and screaming mind. And I'd say things like, and perhaps some of the viewers will find some of this difficult too, and no judgment, where, you know, it's just as it is. And I would say things like, we don't have any lights on in a room unless we're in that room. Because we are solar panel powered, and we're very conscious of how many kilowatt hours a day we can produce. We're very shaded. Our property is filtered sun. So we can only produce a limited amount of solar energy. So we're very careful about how we use that energy. So this flies in the face of the idea of infinite growth and infinite use. And it would annoy her a little bit when I would say, could you please turn the light off when you leave the room? Little things like that. We don't use any dishwashers. We hand wash all our dishes. And not only that, we put a little tub into the sink so that after we've washed the dishes, we carry the water out to the gardens and put it on the plants. And she would get very annoyed, and she'd say, I can't believe it. Now I've washed these dishes by hand. I've broken a fingernail, and now I have to walk out and
throw this
dirty dishpan water, this gray water, on the kale plants, you know. And I'm saying, we're using, it's good for them. We're using biodegradable detergents, and it's perfectly, you know, safe and good for them. And so there was just a lot of that. And
it's amazing it broke down in 3 months.
3 months.
Really, that's a miracle
just
unto itself.
Incredible. She was so ready.
That's a beautiful,
She's a beautiful story. She was so ready. And I would say, and she would get it was really kind of funny, because she would get annoyed with me, and she would say, if this is the good life, I don't know, you know. And I'd say, you know, to me, it's a really good life.
I feel blessed. I can't speak for you.
Yeah, I mean, and I would say to her, because you and I have each other to talk to, and interestingly, she's a woman of color, and I said, we can bridge that gap. We can bridge spiritual gaps. We're not of the same spiritual discipline. I said, and we break bread together, and we eat together, and we can watch that sunset together, or watch. One of the things that was a turning point for her was when we planted the garden in the spring, and she said, I can't believe this will actually produce food. And I said, you just wait and see.
Really?
You wait and see.
She thinks everything grows on the shelf.
Grows on the shelf at the supermarket.
At Albertsons.
Exactly. You know,
there's that tomato.
It's plastic wrapped on styrofoam, you know. And the first little plants that came up, she was so delighted, and that miracle of life.
It's unbelievable.
You know, it was like she went back to Gebser's magical period. I taught her wildcrafting, which is the art of going through the forest and the meadows and finding wild edibles. And I taught her how to harvest 15 different kinds of wild foods. And she was just amazed at how good they tasted. And then when the first little tiny pepper
and ultimately
formed,
how good she felt, because she was eating good food.
That was a big piece.
You know, and not toxic and not polluted and not sugary and not...
She went through a huge physical cleansing and shift. When she came, she could not do the work of being an intern. She was very weak, fatigued very easily. She is robust, beautiful, alive. Her life force, her prana is so... And she sees it. She's very reflective, beautiful woman. And she sees it, and she's like, I can't believe. She's like you. She's like, I can't believe this happened in 3 months.
Right. That's unearth time, but things are speeding up.
They're speeding up.
So,
that's right.
Even so, that's pretty good.
So the other day she said to me, and it was really cute, she said, when I first got here, I thought your idea of a good life was a little bit crazy, and it was on the lunatic fringe and beyond. She goes, but now I'm signed up. She goes, this really is fantastic. A good life.
Right.
And what she has found that she didn't have in the corporate sector was she's found love.
Yeah, right.
Everybody, we all love her.
Right, exactly.
We love her.
And the tomatoes love her.
The tomatoes love her. They're blooming and blossoming. The first little pepper that formed, she just said, I said, you can't touch it, because if you touch it, the bees won't continue to pollinate, but just look at it and behold it. And I would just see her out there just beholding this pepper. And each day it was getting bigger. And this is the miracle of life. This is the miracle of nature. And her mind, it shifted from things like a 401k and money to growing food and giving food away. We're growing so much food that we can't eat it all. We're giving it away. We give it to the Zen monks that are, we live very, very closely to Shasta Abbey, the Zen monastery in Mount Shasta. We provide them with food. We provide different people in the neighborhood, elderly, with food.
Beautiful.
She watched it. And she also watched that one of the things we very much believe in is trying to step outside a monetized system. So rather than paying money for things, if possible, we try to trade and barter. And I might trade helping someone with their horse. They might have a difficult horse. And I trade helping someone with their horse for my organic hay, for my horses. So all of a sudden, the value of things isn't monetized. It's not X number of dollars for that lesson equals X number of dollars for your bale of hay. It's my heartfelt lesson to you is your beautifully baled organic hay. And everybody's an artist. Everybody's a healer. Yeah. And this is, to me, a more enriched way to live than I hand you $20 and we don't even know each other. Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's beautiful because you see a lot of times with a lot of these types of things is, it's just saying no. And there's no to say yes to. But if there's something to say yes to, an alternative, that we have to build new paradigms.
We have to.
Because the other ones are really, it's not that the building is bad or that the car is bad it's just what energy we bring to it.
It's the energy we bring to it, and it's not even that it's bad, it is what it is, but it's that the ego it's gotten away from us.
Right, yeah, we're out of control.
We're out of control, and our species, if the ego keeps going in the way it's going, our species will annihilate every other species on Earth and eventually ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, we're working on it.
We're working on it.
We're cutting off the branch we're sitting on.
We are cutting off the very breadbasket that feeds us. I mean, we're scraping off the tops of mountains. We're extracting more, we're past peak oil, we're extracting coal, we're using water faster than, there's whole cities now in America that don't have clean, drinkable water without pretty hefty water treatment processes. So we are cutting off the vine that feeds us. We're also cutting off our connection to each other, our knowledge of each other. One of the things I think that's implicit in the new paradigm and the entrance into the integral age is something that's being called now relocalization. And relocalization is just that act of communities taking back their personal power and saying, we can do this. We're not going to wait for a solution, a top-down solution. We're just going to do this where we're at, right here, right now. So in Mount Shasta, for example, where I live, we have a tremendous local food movement where every Monday people bring things together from their gardens, from their kitchens, from their handcrafts, and we trade and we make sure, and if there's families that don't have something to bring, they get a gift. We believe in the gift culture. We make sure that they get something. And this whole effort has revitalized our community, and I'm part of something called Transition Town Mount Shasta, and the Transition Town movement is international. We were the 18th Transition Town. There's now 300 internationally, and it's towns that are committed to making a transition from the old paradigm. We know what that is, and we know the wheels are falling off that wagon.
It didn't
work really well.
Right.
It only worked for certain people. If you happen to be a certain race, a certain religion, a certain gender, it worked better than if you happen to be...
Or shoot a basketball really good.
Have some signature strength.
Right.
Exactly. But if you happen to be even the least bit marginalized by that...
Screwed.
You were host.
As they say.
You were host. Right. And you were even further marginalized. So that paradigm, it's not about fixing that paradigm.
And we weren't feeling joyous and loving.
No.
I mean, as a species, even the people who were served by it, because it disconnects.
Disconnects, alienates, isolates. And we don't want to put energy really into fixing that paradigm. We want to build the new.
Right.
Even though we don't totally know what it is.
Right, exactly. We're on the bridge and building it as we go.
As we go. We're brailing our way into it.
We know that we want to experience love. And how does that love
That's
yeah,
right.
talk to that.
And I think it's important to say that that's a really practical, grounded love. It's not oosey-goosey, it's not romantic, it's not foo-foo, head in the sky type love. It's head in the clouds, feet on earth.
Heaven and earth.
Heaven and earth. It's bridging heaven and earth.
There we go.
Integral age. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really happening, and you can really see it. And people who aren't being given the opportunity to partake of that are rebelling. You know,
Absolutely.
they're saying, this is not.
It's exciting.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, exactly. It's extraordinarily exciting.
It's extraordinarily exciting. People who are feeling that their government or their church system or their family structure or whatever is just going to try to keep repairing, that old paradigm, they are rebelling big time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no more. Can't do it.
Consciousness has evolved beyond it.
Right.
This is what Gabser said, and Gabser's philosophy has been such an important touchstone for me. And this is what he said, was that we have that in us. We have that possibility to reconnect with the ever-present origin. It's
that's
there.
what I'm made of. I mean,
that's right. We are that.
Right, exactly.
I am that. You are that. We are that.
All of us, right.
Right.
And I think we ended up at a perfect point, but we're really coming to the end of the show, and I really want to, I know you made a tremendous effort to be here, and it was really extraordinary.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, beautiful.
A blessing to be here. Thank you very much.
All right, so anybody wants any information about Sherry, the book, the art project, call me, Alan, 805-687-2053, 805-687-2053. Good night, we love you, God bless you.